A good Friday afternoon to you all, and welcome to another episode of Frankly Speaking Baseball, coming to you on NGSC Sports Network and TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. We are also on WWBG 1470 AM and WTOB 980 AM and 96.7 FM. We are streaming on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Twitch. We're all over the place. We're in high demand. And I'll tell you what, the guy that I'm about to introduce to you is in high demand as well. Let's welcome in my co-host from the Score, Brett Wiseman. Brett, how you doing, buddy?
Always good, Larry, especially this time of year.
Oh my goodness, do we got so much to talk about today. We just may do the show and not even do an interview today because we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here in the baseball season. But before we get into some of the unbelievable races that are going on, I want to talk about, as we do every week, we're going to start off with some of the hot topics around Major League Baseball. I'm going to start off with first, the Red Sox. They fired Chief Officer Klein Bloom, who I know a lot about because of his days in Tampa Bay. He helped put together the unbelievable farm system in New York. Excuse me, I'll be okay, in Tampa Bay. And he actually did one hell of a job helping get this farm system in Boston where it needs to be. It's number 5. But the one thing Bloom didn't do that people are saying about, you got to remember, it's different being in this position if you're in Boston than if you are in Tampa Bay. The expectations, no disrespect towards the Rays, but from the fans is a lot more expected in Boston. And that's what he fell victim to. But I I firmly believe they made a mistake because he's doing a great job. But where Bloom failed, I think, Brett, is that with this unbelievable talent that he's building in the farm system, he didn't mix in any veterans. Instead, he gave away veterans like what? Mookie Betts, who's having an unbelievable year. Bogarts with San Diego. Avaldi. J.D. Martinez. So they were given away, and the fans had nobody now from a veteran standpoint to pull this team together. What are your thoughts about Bloom? And am I off base here, or what do you think?
No, I think you're spot on. And a lot of those moves were questionable at the time, and they're still questionable to me now. And I think finally you're seeing Bloom face the consequences for those. You talked about not having any veterans, um, and there's been no star power either. The veteran that so you let all these guys go here and there, and then you spend the farm system some of the farm system capital that you acquired for the Bettses and JD Martinez's of the world. You use some of that capital to give to the White Sox to get Chris Sale to be your ace, and he hasn't pitched a full season in the 4 years he's been a Boston Red Sox. So your star, your veteran, your centerpiece can't even stay on the field. You gave up 4 veteran stars, centerpiece, etc. type guys to get one and a bunch of supporting casts. Now you're seeing what has transpired the last couple of years. They have been mediocre at best. That doesn't cut it for the Boston Red Sox.
No, and they gave
Alex
away
Verdugo being your best hitter is not going to win you the AL East. I'm sorry, it's just not.
right. And you know what? Not only the players they gave away were good players, they were also, Brett, fan favorites. I mean, look at Mookie Betts, Martinez. They love J.D. Martinez over there. Bogarts, you know what they thought of him. So it wasn't just like a star player that, okay, he's a good player, but the fans in Boston, they really like the players, and they expect to win today. They are a city that expects to win at all costs. They are a winning tradition in all sports. You got the Celtics, you got the Bruins, everybody knows about the Patriots. Well, the expectation is the same for the Red Sox. And this is a ballpark where you've seen it sold out so many days in a row when they were playing well. And now they're playing in September versus decent teams, but since they're out of the race, pretty much nobody's coming out to the ballpark.
When you're behind the New England Revolution of Major League Soccer in terms of attendance in Boston sports, somebody needs to get fired. And that's what happened.
Yep. And, unfortunately, it's not the GM taking any flack over there, but, he couldn't do what Theo did. He lived in some tough shows. I mean, Theo Epstein was unbelievable. Then he goes over to Chicago. He wins a World Series. So, I mean, then Friedman, who was with the Rays, goes over to the Dodgers and wins. So, I guess the expectation was the same, but unfortunately, and he'll get another job somewhere. Klein Bloom is a guy you got to put in like in Oakland, where he can set that farm system up. There's not a lot of stars on that team, so whatever you do or whatever you get, it's not going to be like the fan base is going to be completely upset because they don't have a lot of stars on that team, and that's no disrespect towards Oakland. That's just the way it is. Let's go ahead. Let's move on. I'll tell you what. If it isn't the Tampa Bay Rays with pitching problems, it's the Texas Rangers. Now it's Max Scherzer, who we found out as of now will not need surgery. He's 39 years old. But what a blow. I mean, if you look at the Rays and you look at the Rangers, six players, six starting pitchers between the two teams. But you had Rasmussen, Springs, McCallahan over there in there. Now we had DeGrom, Scherzer. Wasn't Gray? I think somebody else on that team.
I think John Gray was down for a minute too. Yeah.
Yeah. So you look at this team and it's like, it's amazing because these are two teams that were winning their divisions by good amounts for most part of the year. Then the injury bugs take over, and now the Rays, and we'll get to the Rays in a little bit. But for the Texas Rangers, this is the blow they did not need at this time of year when the race is going right down to the wire.
This is the part of the program where the Rangers wave the white flag and say uncle. Because everything that can happen to them over the course of the past month has happened to them. Every possible thing that could have gone wrong has for them. And you almost, to an extent, feel bad, but in a way, you're almost like, well, this gives the Mariners a chance to get in. The Mariners are a more likable franchise to see in this kind of situation. But you look at the Rangers right now, and they gave up, Ronald Acuna's brother to get Max Scherzer, and now Max Scherzer's out for the rest of the season. Who knows? His career might be over. He's 39 years old. Maybe he's opting not to get surgery because he's going to retire. Who knows? We don't know what goes on inside that man's head. His eyes are two different colors. There's no way to tell what's going on inside the guy's head. He's nuts. But that's why we love him. Anyways, you look at the top piece of the Jordan Montgomery deal with the Cardinals. Thomas Sagassi, the infielder. He was the Cardinals minor league player of the month for August. He didn't even spend the full month of August in the Cardinals organization. Spent 25 days there and hit .310 at Double-A. The Rangers, they went all out, and now maybe they're regretting it a little bit because the Mariners have really come on. The Astros have figured things out. The Rangers are finding out. Maybe we don't live up to Dennis Green's famous press conference statement. Maybe we're not who we thought we were. And we did not let ourselves off the hook.
Yeah, let me ask you this. We're seeing so many. I mean, we can go over the last 4 or 5 years and probably come up with a Major League Baseball team full of pitchers that have had Tommy John surgery. The numbers are just outrageous. And in the day when we had Bob Gibson, or even later on when Nolan Ryan afterwards, and then Randy Johnson, even Roger Clemens, Pedro, if you want to throw in there. These guys, am I wrong? These guys had fastballs that were incredible. But I think even though they had sliders and a second pitch, Brett, I think the difference is they relied a lot more on their fastballs where they would attack hitters and go after them with the fastball, where a lot of these pitchers that we're seeing today are throwing a lot more curveballs than they ever threw in the early 2000s, the 90s, and so on.
Larry, it's because we have kids that are throwing wiffle ball looking sliders when they're 12 years old. And
Right.
when they're pitching in the Little League World Series, trying to win the Little League World Series, their coach wants them to go out there and throw a 12-6 curve, and they're shooting themselves in the arm for 5 or 6 years down the road. Having kids throw the pitches that they're throwing at these young ages, whether it's in Little League and travel ball, no kid should be throwing a slider until they're at least 15. Because if you want to get scientific about it, the development of the human arm does
That's
not
right.
allow you to throw a slider to give your elbow and your shoulder that much torque at 12. You need
Even
to
at
hit
15.
even at 15.
Even at 15.
You don't need to just hit puberty to be able to throw a wicked slider. You need to
Right.
go through it. You need to be able to buy a pack of cigarettes to be able to throw a legitimate slider, not go into the 6th grade.
You know what? I've always said, Brett, that they shouldn't start really getting into practicing throwing curveballs and sliders and changeups, until they get into a college career. Because, then they're getting to that point where you're 18 to 21, because you're still growing when you're in college. A lot of people forget that. You're still not fully developed. They say 21, 22, maybe 23, depending on the individual. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. Any coach that is teaching a kid to throw a curveball or a slider at age 12 to 18 years old should not be coaching youth baseball, in my opinion. That's just the way I feel. I know there's people that'll disagree with me, but you got to think you can't be like the NFL with artificial turf and not care about the players and care more about the money. Well, the same thing with these young kids. These coaches now at 12 and 13 and 14 care so much more about winning than they do developing kids and teaching kids and having them try to throw things because of winning. It's so ridiculous. We've gone away from the kids. And don't get me wrong, I like to win. I like to win when I'm a kid. But at the end of the day, you have to think of the child first, then whatever the result is after that. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I no, I'm with you, and I think I've thought this for the longest time, ever since really I got to college and considered myself a semi-formal adult back. Now I'm 26 and I can call myself somewhat of an adult. I think the only way to deter coaches from pushing that is that every time a kid throws a pitch that's under average fastball velocity for that age group, anytime a kid throws something that is obviously clearly moving / off speed, whether it's a strike or not, it's an automatic ball. You want to walk guys? If they see it moving or they see it's not going as fast as they think it is, they're gonna lay off of it. Even if it's right down the middle, it's an automatic ball. You want to walk everybody? Go for it. It's not going to win your baseball
You know
game.
what? And you know what? If they do it twice in one game, you throw them out of the game because they may not understand why. You tell them why, because your arm is more important long term than it is short term. Let's go ahead. Let's move on. And I don't even know why I'm bringing up this story because all it does is piss me off anyway. But A-Rod's an idiot. Okay? I mean,
you're just now figuring that one out, Larry.
Well, I knew that. But you know what? I'm sorry. Anybody, in my opinion, that calls out either teammates or players other than themselves in whatever it is. Now, I know PEDs, and it's no secret to you or me that are doing this show that Brian Ramirez was on PEDs. We both know that. They both got in trouble for substance abuse. But at the end of the day, it's different when you have A-Rod telling you that they were on. A-Rod, you screwed up more than anybody in the history of baseball when it came to PEDs. And you know what? You're acting like Jose Canseco right now. You're looking for attention, and you'll do whatever you need to get attention because now that you're saying this, you know people are going to come to you and start asking you questions because it draws attention to you. This is where he needs to learn to shut up, keep his mouth shut, and just say no comment when people ask him questions about other people that were involved. Now, once again, I don't know who was involved, all of them, but at the end of the day, if that individual wants to tell us that they were involved, fine. A-Rod should not be telling us.
Listen, A-Rod giving us A-Rod whistleblowing or trying to give us moral advice or say that, hey, what those guys did isn't nearly as bad as what I did. They did the same thing as me, but they did it more and worse. Is like Bill Clinton trying to give us moral advice on how to handle a nice marriage or how to properly run a presidency or stay faithful to your wife who you are legally binded to. It's like O.J. Simpson trying to tell us he didn't murder 2 people. It's a lie. Boldface.
Yep.
It's comical. A-Rod is an absolute bumbling buffoon. We have known this. He had the IQ of a grapefruit at one point. Now he has the IQ of a ping pong ball because he has done so many steroids that it has shrunk his IQ down to about this big. And now he's trying to make himself feel bigger by calling out other people and saying, hey, they did the same thing, but they did it worse. It's like in 2005 when the Senate steroid hearing happened and Mark McGuire was like, plead the fifth. Rafael Palmeiro was like, I don't know anything. Sammy Sosa was like, I magically forgot how to speak English. A-Rod is literally turning himself into Sammy Sosa by deflecting everything away from him. Roger Clemens even did the same thing.
Yeah, it's just terrible, and I don't even want to talk about it anymore. That's how it's just ridiculous. But it was a baseball topic. But I got a better one for you, my friend, and this one we're gonna have fun with. Everybody's talking Acuna Betts. Acuna Betts for the MVP, and I'm gonna tell you what, they're both having unbelievable years. They're both unbelievable players. But Brett, I say neither. Because I'll tell you, Matt Olson should win this upright. Matt Olson, 279, 51 homers, 128 RBIs, 116 runs scored. And let me tell you one of the main differences, and I don't want to discredit Acuna Betts because I think Acuna has 37 homers, 97 RBIs. I know Betts has like 103 RBIs and somewhere like 39 homers. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm just going off the top of my head. But at the end of the day, when we started the season, we knew and expected Acuna to have a great year. You and I expected Mookie Betts to go out there and have a great year. And you know what? They are having great years. They're having terrific years. But nobody could say they expected Matt Olson to go out and hit over 50 homers and have, by the end of the year, over 138 RBIs. We may have said he'll have a good year, but to have this type of year, I just think the guy deserves the MVP more than Acuna and Betts.
Yeah, I'm with you. We knew that both of those guys were MVP candidates coming in the year, not necessarily throw-ins, but you could put a considerable amount of money down and be confident with it. Yeah, Acuna is the first player to have a 30-60, I think it is, season in MLB history. So yeah, that's something. But nobody came into the season thinking Matt Olson was going to do this. And Matt Olson has not had a season like this in his career. Ronald Acuna and Mookie Betts have had seasons close to this. Matt Olson has never been anywhere remotely close to this offensive production-wise at all in his entire career. And he has been playing for about as long as Acuna and Betts have. Again, we're not saying those two aren't having spectacular seasons. What Acuna has been able to accomplish putting up that number, partly due to the speed up the game rules. It sped him up. Mookie Betts is stealing more bases as a result now as well. But, Matt Olson being as consistent a hitter and as consistent a defender, I think when you look at the actual definition of this award, the most valuable player to their team, I argue, and I put behind the statement that Matt Olson is more valuable to the Atlanta Braves than Ronald Acuna is.
I will, and I was just going to actually say that. So you and I, and let me explain to the fans out there what we mean, because I know exactly what you mean, Brett. Acuna could have got hurt, and the Braves still would have won. The Braves still would have won the East, which they weren't. I can't look anybody in the eyes and tell you that you're talking about Matt Olson. Forget the home runs. He's knocked in 130 runs, okay? That's 130 of their runs, okay, that he's knocked in. Now, also understand that he is a very good first baseman defensively as well, so he helps the team. But also, here is a guy that's also scored over 100 runs. So, when you see a guy hit 50 homers, you think of a Pete Alonso, who doesn't hit for average. He hits in the 240s. I'm sorry, folks. There was a day when 280 was a respectable average in Major League Baseball. For a power hitter to hit 280 with 51 homers and 128 RBIs, tell you he's doing a lot more than just hitting home runs. So I agree with Brett. And, you can also argue there's another guy sitting in L.A., a teammate of Mookie Betts named Freddie Freeman, who Olson replaced as the Atlanta Brave. So it is a great race. We talk about great pennant races. This is one of the better MVP races of recent time. It really is, because you got 4 unbelievable players. But at the end of the day, guys, I don't know. I definitely think that Matt Olson should be the MVP.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah. And, it's just because the Braves would not be where they are today without him doing it.
And I think we lose sight of, real quickly, the meaning of the award MVP.
Yep.
Matt Olson exemplifies that definition to a T in terms of what he means and what he has meant all season to the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah. And there's no doubt about it. And like you said, the definition is definitely there. And he typifies what an MVP is. And I think the biggest reason is because of what we said earlier, Brett, is what was the expectation of the player before the season started? Not that we expected him to do bad, but there was no way, like I said earlier, we expected the other 3 to have great years. We did not expect Matt Olson to go off like this and hit 51 homers. And what do we got? Still about a couple weeks left in the season. So,
if you would have told me that at this point he had 50 homers and 130 RBIs, I would have asked you what you were smoking and if I could have some of it, because that would just been would have been a crazy prediction in February. Now we've got half the month left. He could have 150 RBIs and 60 home runs by the end of this thing. I mean, it's just those are numbers that have been unheard of for years.
And he just solidifies the entire already potent offense of this Atlanta Braves team. Well, listen, let's go ahead. Let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some unbelievable races going on and some not so unbelievable pennant races going on. We'll be back right after this.
So anxious about moving Mom into a senior living community. We feel so much better now. Mom is thriving. She's living her own life. We're totally in debt to Phoenix Senior Living because they recognize that when it comes to Mom, everything matters. I can't thank them enough for giving Mom the life we so desperately wanted her to have. She has such a sense of purpose and connection now. Her whole life has changed.
At Phoenix Senior Living, we want to provide more than just a beautiful building. In all my years of working with seniors, I have never once received a letter about how life-changing our beautiful building and decor were. But I have received letter after letter full of gratitude and appreciation for the people who have given their loved ones the love, care, and attention they needed. For every senior in our care, we invest the time and energy getting to know them, their likes, their dislikes, their interests, their needs, because truly knowing each of our residents and their families is crucial to providing excellent care unique to just them. That's our vision, and it's one we'd be honored to share with you and your loved one.
13 Daggers Tattoo Studio is looking for a new tattoo artist. Must be established with a strong portfolio and good work ethic. Stop by today at 13 Daggers across from Patriot Park on Fort Campbell Boulevard. Clarksville's ultimate tattoo studio. Tattoos, touch-ups, and consultations. See the artist's work online at 13daggerstattoo.com and get the custom experience you want with killer ink. Book today and get pricked by a pro. 13 Daggers Tattoo Studio. Rockin' hard on Boulevard.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Frankly Speaking of Baseball. I'm Larry Frank, along with Brett Wiseman, and I'll tell you what, this is the best time of year. You hear my buddy Brett say this all the time. There's nothing better than the last couple of weeks, the stretch run of Major League Baseball, and we got it covered for you folks. And I want to talk about first, Brett, before we will get to the race. We'll start with the American League East. A huge 4-game series happening this weekend. The Rays and the Orioles. Right now, Tampa Bay Rays are 2 games back. So, in my opinion, Brett, first of all, it's amazing what the Rays are doing with all their injuries. The latest one is, I believe it was Paredes. No, I'm sorry, Jose Siri is down. Hopefully, he'll be back for the playoffs, but definitely out for the regular season. Good news for the Rays. Manuel Margot has just been reactivated, so they do have somebody back in his place. But we talk week after week about how amazing it is that it's still hanging on. But when I look at this 4-game series, this is what I'm thinking. They're 2 games behind. They win 3 or 4, they're tied. Okay? If they win 4 or 4, they're up 2 games. In my belief, I say the Rays, not that it's over if they split, okay? They're still only 2 games back, but I think it's really important that the Rays take at least 3 or 4 in this series.
I agree. When you look at the math of this, again, I don't think they're out of it, but it would take a much larger scale collapse the last 2 weeks from Baltimore if the Rays can't win, at least win the series. I think at the absolute least, you have to take 3 of 4, if not get the sweep. Because after this weekend, if it's a split, it's going to take a pretty seismic collapse from Baltimore, which I just don't see happening. So this weekend really will determine whether or not we're focused on the race for the AL East for the last 2 weeks, or if we're focused on lumping the Rays into formally out of the AL East race and throwing one more hat into the very, very crowded AL wildcard.
And when you look at this Rays team, even with all these injuries, they're top 5 in offense and top 2 in pitching. It doesn't make sense. This stuff is real, what we're saying to you folks out there. And with all the injuries, if Kevin Cash, I don't know. I think
if he doesn't win manager of the year,
yeah.
If he doesn't win that, there ought to be a federal investigation.
Yeah, because the way he is doing this I think is his best job. And not that he's done a bad job before. I do talk about him a lot being over analytical, but the job he's done with this team, with the conditions he has to face, a lot of managers might have folded. And he gets everybody to play at such a high level. But, we talk
And
about
Larry,
the
he's had to abandon a lot of those analytical notions that have made him pretty much gotten him to where he is. He's had to go to the straight up old school next man up kind of managerial mentality.
Yep.
He has just, for lack of better phrasing, managed the personnel that he has, gotten the most out of them, and done it extremely, extremely well.
And you talk about trade line deals. We weren't so sure about this deal, but I'll tell you what, the one deal that's really working out for them is picking up Aaron Savale. I mean, he's 7-3 right now, 2.96 ERA, and he's been a lifesaver for this pitching staff that now has Tyler Glasnow, and they still got Eflin, but I mean, so they still got, I don't know where they get them all from, but it's just amazing. But he is the guy right now that I tell you, the move that I give the most credit for the Rays that they made at the trade deadline has to be this move.
And they gave up one of the best prospects, not just in their system, but one of the best overall prospects in all of baseball to get him. So far, it's paid off. Of course, we're not going to see what Cleveland gets out of Kyle Manzardo until a couple of years down the road, probably not until 2025 at the earliest. But the Rays needed an extra arm towards the bottom of the rotation, the 3 to 5 slot, to stabilize where Jeffrey Springs and Shane McClanahan had gone down. Aaron Savale has done that, and done that very, very well. He really slid into the spot that Rich Hill did so well in a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and yes, the Rich Hill, who's lasted forever. And you look at the Orioles, and I'll tell you what, Gunnar and Henderson, Anthony Santander having unbelievable years. But now's the time for the Rays, if they're going to ever make up ground on the Orioles, it's time to do it, because Felix Bautista, the best reliever in all of baseball, is sidelined right now. He was 8-2 with a 1.48 ERA and 33 saves. So, if you can stay close to the Orioles, these 4 games going into the 7th and the 8th innings, now what used to be the definite edge for the Orioles has to be with Peter Fairbanks and the Rays. Fairbanks 23 saves, and he's been lights out the last couple of months.
You go into the late innings against Baltimore with Felix Bautista on the other side. If you're trailing going into the 9th inning, it's pretty much a death sentence. Like, you have kicked the chair out from underneath you. You're hanging at that point. Now with him out, I don't know who to trust in that role right now to step up in like a closer by committee kind of thing for Baltimore. And we saw it kind of backfire against my Cardinals. I'm not going to give credit to the Cardinals. I'm going to take credit away from Baltimore, because, look, the Cardinals had no business going into Baltimore and winning a series against a team that is leading the toughest division in baseball. The Cardinals were almost going to lose 100 games on purpose at one point just to get one of those 10 picks in the draft lottery. And they go in there and they win a series against the team that's leading the AL East. Adam Wainwright gets his 199th win. Did anyone know who Richie Palacios was before 2 nights ago? Hits 3 home runs in 2 nights at Camden Yards. All of a sudden, he's a hero in St. Louis. For Baltimore right now, as important a weekend as you said this is for Tampa Bay, I think it's even more important for Baltimore, because you come off losing a series to a terrible Cardinals team. You have got to look yourself in the mirror and say, are we really capable of winning this division?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, like I said, it's unbelievable what it's coming down to. But like you said, this is it. I mean, this is what it's all about. This is why you play the games. And both teams right now have over 90 wins. So it's not like either of these teams are having a bad year. It's just that the Rays got off to such an unbelievable start, winning the first 13 games. Everybody thought it was over, but there's a reason why you play 162 games. And not only are they showing it, the Rangers are showing it too. over in the West Coast, which we'll get to in a minute. But we want to give congratulations. It looks like, I mean, they're just about clinched at the Minnesota Twins in a Central Division that wasn't really good. You got to give them credit. The one thing that they have, and you and I talked about it, and that's wins games, is pitching. And and we know they got power. The problem with their power is it's inconsistent. That's why they got 70 losses. This is a team right now that is only 6 games over 500, and the only team in the division over 500. So it's not a great division, but still, the Twins can still be a dangerous team come playoff time.
There have been so many instances of teams in Major League Baseball that have won terrible divisions, that haven't been good enough, but have been just not bad enough to win their terrible divisions. I'm biased when I bring this up, but the St. Louis Cardinals in 2006 won 82 games. 82 wins in a 162-game season. Nobody in their right mind thought the Cardinals were going to go out and win the World Series, let alone get past the San Diego Padres in a division series. What do? They sweep the Padres. They beat the Mets in 7, who won 107 games.
Right.
Cardinals won 25 less games than the Mets did that year. The Cardinals went out and beat them in a 7-game LCS. And then once they got to the World Series against the Tigers, it was almost smooth sailing because the Tigers had swept the A's at that point, and the Cardinals were fresh. The Tigers were sleepwalking, and the Cardinals blitzed them in 5 games. The thing about this time of year is if you've got pitching, which at that time, the Cardinals had a pretty good amount of pitching. Adam Wainwright was the closer on that team. He was a rookie. He wasn't the starter. Chris Carpenter was your ace, and you had Jeff Suppan backing him up. And Jeff Weaver, who was pulled off of waivers from the Angels in July that year. You look at the Twins. They've got Sonny Gray, their ace, and they got a couple of real good starting pitching pieces behind him, and they've got a really, really good bullpen.
And they do. And it's not like any team in this division has been playing well of late either. Minnesota is winning this by default, and
Right.
That's no disrespect by them. But let's look at this. Last 10 games, Minnesota 5-5, Cleveland 3-7. They needed to play that best baseball. What do? They go 3-7. Terry Francona, by the way, stepping down after this year. Detroit 5-5 in their last 10. The White Sox 3-7 in their last 10, and then you got the Royals 4-6. So when you look at this division, it is just the worst division in all of Major League Baseball. But if you move down a little bit or a little bit further west, you got one of the best races in Major League Baseball. You got Houston right now is in first place by 1 game on Texas and 1 game on Seattle. And I'll tell you what, we've been bouncing back and forth. And when you look at this team, we already said it. We just said it a couple of seconds ago. The best pitching wins. Out of Houston, Texas, and Seattle, who has the best ranked pitching staff out of those 3 in the major leagues right now?
I'm going to say Houston.
Seattle.
Wow.
Okay. Which I was surprised because I thought it was Houston as well. I looked at it. Now, Houston's right behind them, so it's not like it's a huge thing. But, Texas, we thought had the best built team in Major League Baseball at one point this year. But you got to give Houston credit. Altuve's playing lights out, and, the scandal's way behind them now. They're able to concentrate, play baseball. But if you ask me, the team I think has the best chance, you look at the Seattle team, and it's Seattle. Julio Rodriguez, 99 RBIs, 30 homers. Teoscar Hernandez, 267 batting average, 25 homers, 88 RBIs. And then Eugenio Suarez, 20 homers, 87 RBIs. But the thing with Seattle that is different, Houston wins, Texas wins. We talked about the pitching of Seattle. Seattle gets timely hits. It's like when they need a hit, they get a hit. It's not like, hey, we're hitting for average, but we're hitting when it counts. And that's where those teams win. We'll talk about the wild card in a few minutes because it gets interesting there. I don't want to steal the thunder yet there because we got another team involved in that as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. But out of these three teams, and I know the favorite, a lot of people are going to say Houston because of the experience they have of being here before. But is it Texas? Is it Houston, Brett? Or 2 weeks from now, are you going to say, unbelievable? And I'm talking about the division right now.
I'm as much credit as I have given the Texas Rangers, and I'm having to wear a lot of those comments at the moment. I'm ruling them out of this AL West down the stretch here. I think they'll get in as a wild card, of course. I think that's a guarantee, but they're not going to win the division. I think the Mariners have a better shot at overtaking the Astros than the Rangers do. But I don't think either of those teams are going to be able to overtake Houston, period. And it's because of the reason you just said. Houston has the experience. They have been there, they have done that. And when you have that to fall back on, other than Seattle just being there last year and that's it, really, you have a decided advantage over anybody who tries to come after you.
See, and I'm going to disagree with you on something as we get to the wild card race in the American League. Tampa Bay right now, or Baltimore, but Baltimore's in first place now. So Tampa Bay's up by 8.5 games in the wild card. I don't see them relinquishing that. They're going to make the wild card at least in this race. Then you got Texas, a half game up over Seattle, and then 1.5 games up over Toronto. Now, if you're asking me, Larry, how do you think this pans out by the end of the year, which is what, about a little over 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks at the most away? I'm going to tell you something. I think Texas is the odd man out because Toronto, is starting to play some good baseball, and we know about the offense, but they got some good pitching as well. I think that it's going to be Tampa Bay, Seattle, and Toronto.
I could certainly see that as a possibility, especially when you factor the Max Scherzer injury into the equation here. We don't know the impact that's going to have yet, but certainly when you throw that into consideration, I think it's a definite possibility. For me, I don't think the Blue Jays have put it together all year long enough for me to trust them to overtake the Rangers for that third wild card. I think that the Rangers have had a more consistent basis of their performance over the course of the season. The Blue Jays have been so up and down that when you're that inconsistent all year and you have to put it together at a certain time, it almost puts more pressure on every single person in the lineup. They grip the bat a little bit harder. They grip the rosin bag too much, get a little bit too much rosin on that hand. Ball slips out, pitches miss their marks, guys are making errors, guys start pressing. It's where a Rangers team having somebody like Bruce Bochy to say, hey, just settle down. We're in a good spot. We'll be fine. Versus a Toronto team that has a first-year manager and a bunch of guys who have played 5 years or less in the big leagues.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about it that out of all these managers in this wild card race, Bruce Bochy is the best manager. And I have a lot of respect for Dusty Baker as well. But if you put, I would have to take Bochy over Baker if somebody asked me who is the better manager. And I think they're both terrific managers. So it's no disrespect towards Dusty. I think Bochy has done more with Texas. So, it's kind of like the Matt Olson thing we were talking about earlier. We expected Texas to be a good team. We didn't expect them to have in the middle of the year, that lead they did. Now the key comes down to who keeps the team together. Dusty Baker, you can say, probably has a little bit easier of a job because he's not losing players, where Bruce Bochy now has that on his side where he has to tell his players where the morale of the team could be like, oh my goodness, here goes another one. You got to hope for the best man, one of the best managers in baseball, like you said, to say, calm down, we're okay. Because when you have someone like Scherzer go out now after DeGrom went out and Gray went out, the morale of the team, it's very easily for them to, fold. And, I think with Bruce Bochy there, but at the end of the day, I'm still going to say I think it's Seattle, Toronto. And you know what? If it isn't Toronto, it'll be 3 teams from the Western Division in there.
Yeah, and you made a good point right there. I think if an injury of this similar caliber would happen to Toronto, it would completely derail them. Because they don't have the kind of manager nor the roster experience to weather that kind of storm. Because everyone's roles change when your ace goes down. Jordan Montgomery now pretty much becomes the ace because there's no Jacob deGrom and John Gray's on a pitch count, essentially. So Jordan Montgomery, he's your number one guy. Bruce Bochy walks into the clubhouse. Jordan, you're numero uno. Boom. Everything just changed. Whereas for Toronto, if Jose Barrios goes down and everybody looks at the next man up, I don't think they feel as confident as Texas would in Jordan Montgomery as to who the number one guy is behind Jose Barrios, if Jose Barrios were to go down. They also don't have the manager that can come in there and say, Jordan, you're the number one guy. He's not going to say it with the same level of conviction that Bruce Bochy would. He's going to be like,
that's right.
You're the number one guy? Question mark. There's confidence that comes with having weathered so many storms that Bruce Bochy has. And there's some experienced guys on that roster too. Corey Seager, probably chief among them, that can step up in a veteran role and say, all right, Max Scherzer's down. Here's what's got to happen. Here's what we got to do. Who's standing up and saying that in Toronto's clubhouse? Vlad Jr.? Bo Bichette? Kevin Biggio? No.
Yeah. Yep. And it's going to be fun. Like I said, the last 3 weeks. Let's go ahead. Let's move over to the National League. Is it safe to say that the Atlanta Braves are the best team in Major League Baseball?
There's no doubt about it. They win the NL East for the 23rd time, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They have clinched the division. Which, by the way,
by most 17 games.
Most division titles ever by any franchise in any division ever in the history of baseball. So bookmark that. It's also the 6th year in a row they've won that division. When was the last time they won a ton of divisions in a row? What happened then? Oh, yeah, they won like a lot of World Series too. So they have one of those recently also. It's so hard to find a team right now that is better than them. Top to bottom, pitching-wise, at the plate, in the field, starting pitching, bullpen. The Braves have every conceivable piece, and every one of those pieces is performing at the highest of levels. This team is so good, it almost seems like they're playing MLB The Show on rookie mode at times because they are making games in September look as easy as they would be played back towards Memorial Day. I mean, this team is in such a form right now that no one, nothing can stop them. They are just an absolute machine.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I don't know. They have 17 games up on the second place Philadelphia Phillies, which we'll get into the Phillies in a little bit. But, one team you got to give some credit about. We've been talking a lot about the Cubs and the Reds and how close they were to taking over number one for Milwaukee. But the Brewers continue to play under the radar and continue to win. They got 82 wins now, so another winning season for the Milwaukee Brewers. They now have a lead on the second place Cubs by 4.5. It'll take a major meltdown the last 3 weeks for them to lose this division.
It will. And like I've said a few different times on this show, they've done it with two notables in the lineup, two guys whose names you know, two guys whose names you know in the starting rotation. And then everybody else, it's just a gaggle of a bunch of guys no one's ever heard of. And this ragtag bag of misfits and cast-offs is such a great story, but it's also such a Milwaukee Brewer story because of who their manager is. Craig Counsell's got two rings in 5 years and was
Yes,
a
he
cast-off
does.
in between those. Scored the winning run in the 2001 World Series, got the hit that started the rally, and then scored the winning run in the 97 World Series for the Marlins. He was a cast-off everywhere because he was small, And Craig Counsell, as a manager, embodies what this Brewers team is, which is a bunch of undersized, undervalued underdogs centered around a superstar who's had a couple of down years recently in Christian Yelich. A pitching staff that is centered around Corbin Burns, who probably won't be there after this season, given how his arbitration went. We don't even know if the team will be in Milwaukee going forward with the issues that American Family Field is running into. So for the Brewers to be having this kind of season under the circumstances in which they're having it, all the credit in the world goes to Craig Counsell, because he has taken a bunch of no-names and put them together with 2 to 4 superstar players and made a winning team out of it in probably the second worst division in baseball.
All right, let's move over to the West. I asked you earlier, were the Braves the best team in Major League Baseball? And I think we both agreed that there's no doubt about it. Are the Dodgers the second best team in Major League Baseball?
The Dodgers are the best team in baseball, not named the Atlanta Braves. I think we can confidently say that. And that's the thing, is there are so many threats in the American League that we don't know who's going to come out of there. We have a pretty good idea of who's going to be in the NLCS. It's going to be the Braves and the Dodgers, barring miracle upsets in the division series. Now, that being said, the Braves are going to have the 1 seed. The Braves are going to have the bye. So, the Dodgers are going to have to play in that best-of-3 wild card series. That complicates things a little bit, because in that best-of-3, if you don't come out in that first game guns a-blazing, you're down 1-0, all of a sudden, whoa, you're playing for your life. It's super regional style. Like, if you lay an egg on Friday, you go into Saturday potentially being toast. So,
yep.
Are the Dodgers the second best team in baseball, not named the Atlanta Braves? Yes. But when you factor in that they're pretty much locked into the 2 seed at this point in the NL, they're going to have to play that wild card weekend series. You kind of start to question a little bit because of the unpredictability of that best-of-3.
Yeah, and you look at this wild card, Brett, as we get down to the nitty-gritty here. Philadelphia is in the lead with a 4-game lead. The Cubs have a 2.5-game lead. Then listen to this, buddy. San Francisco, Arizona, Cincinnati, all tied for the 3rd spot, with San Francisco winning the tiebreaker as of now, and Miami is only a half game behind them. So, what is this a race? There could be a game 163 this year.
There could be a game 164 to determine who won game
That's right.
163.
You're right.
I mean, what tiebreaker do the Giants have the advantage? That's like, what, tiebreaker 8B at this point? I mean, we are having to pull out the slide rule to figure out who's got the advantages in this NL wildcard race. That's why it's so much fun. This NL wildcard is going to be the one that everyone is going to have their eyes on going down the stretch. It's not that the AL wildcard is not going to be exciting, but there are so many more hats in this ring, and so much could happen. This could go completely the opposite direction in 2 weeks. Cincinnati and Miami could be 2-3 in 2 weeks if something happens to the Giants. That's how tight this thing is.
And you look at these teams, it's enjoyable to watch because you really don't care. You got Arizona. I'm happy to see them in there. You got Cincinnati. Right. Boy, would that be nice to see, L.A. De La Cruz and this team, the way they've been playing. Then you got Miami. Nobody, no Arias, you get to see he's batting about 360 right now. But you got these teams in there that weren't supposed to be there, so you're okay with either of them. The question is, can San Francisco hold on? And the Cubbies only have a 2.5 game lead. But you know what? Something tells me that Arizona is going to push their way back into that third spot and end up being that third wild card. I don't know. I'm not I don't work for Vegas or, anything like that. But I don't know why. But something's just telling me that's the way it's going to be. But you know what? We're going to find out soon enough.
I think the thing that's telling you is a person. It's an ace pitcher, and his name is Zach Gallen.
Right.
I think he's your anchor for the Diamondbacks going down the stretch here.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. Once again, you and I live and die by the always saying, pitching and defense wins, and I think that's where Arizona has the nod. But I'll tell you what. Either way, it's going to be a fun last 3 weeks. We know it's going to come down to the end, and you know what? There is no room for error the next 3 weeks with any of these ball clubs. The team that makes the least mistakes, I know that's easily said, but it's not easily done, is going to be the team that jumps into that number 3 spot. And don't automatically think, the Cubbies and the Phillies are locked in. A 4-game lead with 3 weeks left is not a lot, believe it or not, for wild card, and 2.5 game lead is not a lot. So, when some of these teams are going to be facing each other, it's going to be fun. It's going to be wild. But you know what, buddy? We're out of time. I mean, unbelievable. Yeah. We don't need our executive producer, yelling at us. We don't want that. He's busy already.
We're wrapping up. We promise.
All right. That's right. Des Johnson, he's saying, let's go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, another great show for you. It's coming down to the wire. Make sure to watch the games. As always, if you ever leave any comments, go ahead and leave comments on whatever platform that you are watching the show on. I'm sure we'll see it. And you know what? We'll be back again next week. Same time, same place. For Brett Wiseman, I'm Larry Frank. Have a good week.